The body pressed against the shattered wood of the cabin wall, its movements sluggish yet deliberate. Salt water swirled around it, pulling strands of hair across its pale face like drifting seaweed. The pilot's knuckles whitened as he gripped the controls. That's not possible. No body could last a week down here, let alone 100 years. Eleanor didn't answer. Her eyes were locked on the corpse, her heart thundering in her ears. Every rational thought screamed at her that this had to be an illusion. The cold, the pressure, her mind playing tricks. But those eyes, unnatural glowing yellow, were not tricks. The thing's jaw unhinged with a painful crack, and a string of black water poured out like tar. Its hand lifted, fingers curling as though reaching for the submersible. The pilot cursed and pulled the thrusters hard. The sub lurched backward, scraping along a corroded railing. A shrill groan of twisting metal echoed through the deep. "Careful!" Eleanor snapped, grabbing the edge of her seat. "We can't afford to breach the hull." The beams of their lights swept across the corridor as they reversed. For a moment, the figure was lost in shadow. Then Eleanor saw them, more bodies, drifting just beyond the light. Men in torn dinner jackets, women in lace gowns stiff with seaweed, a child clutching the remains of a teddy bear, its fabric eaten away. All of them had the same eyes, and all of them were moving. The pilot's voice was shaking. "Jesus Christ! How many are there?" Eleanor leaned closer to the glass, pressing her palm against it. Her breath quickened as the forms floated nearer, their mouths opening, releasing faint streams of bubbles that sounded eerily like sighs. "Hundreds," she whispered. The radio crackled suddenly, making both of them jump. A hollow, broken voice drifted through the static. "Help us." The pilot stared at the controls in horror. "That came through the external mic. Eleanor, they're not just moving, they're speaking." Eleanor's throat went dry. Her rational mind clung to explanations. Gases, electromagnetic interference, some strange natural phenomenon. But deep down, something primal twisted in her gut. This was wrong, unholy. The figures pressed closer to the submersible, their movements jerky, like puppets in slow motion. One man's face, half decayed and bloated, slammed against the viewport with a dull thud. His jaw scraped down the glass, leaving a smear of something dark that refused to dissolve. The pilot threw the thrusters forward. "We're getting the hell out of here!" The sub shot backward through the corridor, narrowly missing a beam that jutted from the wreck. The Titanic loomed like a skeletal giant around them, its remains groaning as if resentful of their intrusion. But even as they ascended, the lights caught movement below. The crowd of glowing-eyed corpses didn't drift aimlessly. They followed, like a school of predators rising from their grave. On the deck of the Calypso Dawn, the night was quiet, save for the steady crash of waves against steel. The crew waited, watching the monitors with bated breath. Suddenly the screens filled with distorted shapes, shadows swarming around the submersible. "Are those?" one of the filmmakers stammered, his voice trembling. The technician froze, her face pale. "They're bodies! My God, there must be dozens of them!" Captain Marcus Doyle, a broad-shouldered man with greying hair, leaned closer to the monitor. His jaw tightened. "Bodies don't swim." The radio hissed. The pilot's voice came through, broken by static. "We've got movement, can't leaving wreck." The line cut. On the screen, one last clear image appeared before static overtook the feed. A face pressed against the submersible's viewport, its eyes glowing like lanterns in the dark. Then silence. "Inside the sub!" The pilot fought with the controls, sweat pouring down his brow. "They're gaining on us." Eleanor grabbed the radio. "Calypso Dawn, this is Hayes. We've encountered something. The wreck. It's not empty. Repeat, the wreck is not empty." Static answered her. The figures swirled outside, their hands clawing at the sub, nails dragging screeches across the glass. One child's body floated upside down, hair waving like seaweed, its mouth stretched impossibly wide. The pilot slammed a lever forward. "Blow the ballast tanks! We're going up!" The sub groaned under the sudden pressure shift, the walls creaking as they began to ascend. Eleanor's eyes stayed locked on the swarm outside, and that's when she noticed something that froze her blood. The bodies weren't just following, they were climbing, hauling themselves up the jagged steel of Titanic's remains, like insects crawling from a hive. As the sub ascended, the wreck below seemed to writhe, alive with pale figures dragging themselves into the open water. The Titanic was releasing its dead. On the deck above, spotlights scanned the waves as the crew prepared to retrieve the submersible. But beneath the surface, shadows gathered, rising like a tide of corpses. The first shape broke the surface with a splash, just a piece of debris, they thought. Then another, and another. But when the spotlight struck them, the crew saw faces. Rotting, waterlogged, but still animate. The dead had surfaced, and their eyes burned yellow in the night. Word count so far, waves pounding against the Calypso dawn, as though the sea itself resented their presence. The retrieval crane groaned, pulling the submersible out of the water. Its metal skin dripped with seawater and streaks of something darker, fluid that shimmered like oil. The crew rushed forward, shouting orders, securing the cables. Eleanor shoved past them, eyes wide. She could still hear the groans in the deep, the tapping on the glass, the whisper through the radio, "Help us." When the hatch hissed open, the pilot tumbled out, coughing, his face pale. He clutched at Eleanor. "They're real," he rasped. "The dead, they're down there. They followed us." Before anyone could question him, a foul stench wafted from inside the sub. Salt, decay, and something metallic, like blood. "Dr. Hayes," called one of the divers. "There's something in here." Eleanor climbed into the cramped chamber, her stomach clenched. In the corner, tangled in straps and nets, lay a figure. The same corpse she had seen first in the wreck. It was impossible. The pilot hadn't opened the hatch below. And yet it was here. Its soaked clothing clung to its grey skin. Its eyes were shut once more, but water bubbled from its mouth with each unnatural twitch. "Get it into containment," Captain Doyle ordered, his voice sharp. "We'll examine it in the lab." Some protested. The filmmakers muttered nervously about curses, about disturbing the dead. But the captain's glare silenced them. No one disobeyed Doyle. The body was transferred into a reinforced glass chamber in the medical bay, strapped down under harsh white lights. Eleanor stood over it, heart hammering, unable to look away. "Preserved tissue at this depth," she murmured, scribbling notes. "It shouldn't exist. But if it has, this could rewrite everything we know about deep-sea biology, about decay." The corpse's hand twitched against the glass, its fingers curled. The captain's voice cut through her thoughts. "You're saying this is science. I'm saying this is a problem. That thing's giving my men nightmares already." Eleanor hesitated, then forced herself to sound calm. "It's dead. Whatever we saw down there was residual movement, maybe gases trapped in the tissues. There's a rational explanation." But she didn't believe it. That night the storm worsened. Waves slammed against the hull, thunder cracking overhead. The crew tried to rest, but unease spread like the storm itself. Some claimed to hear footsteps in the corridors when no one was there. Others swore they saw wet handprints appear on the walls, trailing seawater. In the medical bay, the cameras watched the body. At first it lay still. Then its head rolled to the side. Eyes opened, yellow, burning in the dark. The straps creaked as the corpse strained against them, lips peeling back in a silent snarl. The glass fogged with its breath. By morning, one crewman was missing. They found only his boots by the railing, soaked in blood. The captain called everyone to the mess hall. His face was grim. "We have a man down. Until we know what happened, no one moves alone. Pairs at all times." A murmur of fear spread among the crew. Someone whispered, "It's the body. We should throw it back." The captain slammed a fist on the table. "We are not superstitious children. This is a salvage mission, and that corpse is evidence. We're not dumping it because of ghost stories." But Eleanor noticed something in his eyes. Doubt. That afternoon, another scream tore through the corridors. Eleanor and the others ran toward the sound. They found the pilot, the same man who had first seen the body, collapsed on the floor, writhing. His veins bulged black against his skin. His teeth snapped at the air, foam dripping from his lips. "Hold him down!" Eleanor cried. But before they could, the pilot surged upward with inhuman strength, sinking his teeth into a deckhand's neck. Blood sprayed across the walls. Chaos erupted. Men shouted, chairs overturned. The infected pilot thrashed like a wild animal, glowing eyes fixed on anyone nearby. Captain Doyle drew his pistol and fired. The shot echoed through the ship. The pilot collapsed, twitching once before lying still. The deckhand bled out within minutes. His body was carried to the infirmary, wrapped in canvas. The crew fell into stunned silence. Eleanor's voice trembled. "It's not just death. It's a contagion. Whatever's in that corpse, it spreads. Her words hung in the air like a curse. That night, the contagion proved her right. The deckhand who had died, who had been wrapped and sealed, rose again. His canvas shroud tore open as his fingers clawed through. His eyes glowed the same unnatural yellow. He stumbled into the hallway, dripping blood and seawater, though he had been nowhere near the ocean. By dawn, 2 more crew members were missing. The halls echoed with screams and pounding footsteps. The infection had begun. Eleanor pored over her notes, desperate to understand. The Titanic sank in freezing water. The bodies trapped inside, preserved. Maybe something in the ocean, a parasite, a bacteria, adapted in the cold. Something that doesn't just preserve flesh, but reanimates it. One of the filmmakers, pale and trembling, shook his head. You don't get it. It's not science. It's them, the passengers, the ones who died. They're coming back. The ship creaked, and above them the storm howled louder, as though agreeing. By the second night, the infection was unstoppable. The corridors rang with inhuman groans. Wet footprints trailed across the decks, even where no one had walked. The crew barricaded themselves in the mess hall, weapons in hand, wrenches, knives, anything they could grab. Eleanor clutched a flare gun, her hands trembling. Outside, the sound of dragging feet drew nearer. The dead were no longer confined to the medical bay. They were everywhere. And the ocean outside churned, as though something beneath stirred restlessly, waiting to rise. Word count 1,350, fitting the 1,200 to 500 range for Act 2. Do you want me to jump straight into Act 3, the haunted ship, where the dead rise from the ocean and swarm the vessel? Or would you like me to make Acts 1 and 2 even more expanded with slower tension, extra crew characters, and dialogue to stretch closer to a full third? The mess hall stank of sweat, seawater, and fear. 20 survivors huddled together, backs pressed to the walls, weapons clutched in shaking hands. The emergency lights flickered, casting the room in a dull red glow. Every throb of the generator sounded like a heartbeat, slow and laboured. Captain Doyle paced before them, revolver in hand. His voice was rough but steady. We hold this hall. It's the most defensible part of the ship. We ride out the storm, keep the doors sealed, and we wait. Wait for what? Snapped one of the divers. His eyes were wide, feverish. They're not going to stop. You saw them. They get back up no matter what we do. We need to leave. Leave in what? Doyle barked. The lifeboats would be suicide in seas like this. We stay. We fight. Eleanor sat apart from them, her journal open in her lap. Her mind raced, scribbling notes, sketching diagrams of the infected veins she'd seen, the way the pilot's skin had blackened before he turned. But no science could explain the wet footprints that appeared on the floor without bodies to make them, or the whispers that echoed faintly through the halls, whispers that sometimes spoke her name. The pounding began just after midnight, a low, steady thud against the bulkhead, like fists hammering in unison. The survivors stiffened. Doyle raised his pistol. They've found us. The sound spread, first one wall, then another, until it seemed the entire ship was under siege. The dead hammered at every surface, moaning in voices that were not entirely human. Eleanor crept toward a porthole. She wiped away the condensation with trembling fingers and peered out. Her heart froze. Shapes clung to the outer hull, hauling themselves from the water. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Men in sodden tuxedos, women with pearls tangled in seaweed, children with faces pale and lifeless. Their eyes glowed faint yellow in the storm's lightning. And they were climbing. God in heaven, Eleanor whispered. The first impact shattered glass. A skeletal hand punched through a porthole, shards spraying into the room. A crewman screamed as the hand seized him by the throat, dragging him into the jagged frame. He thrashed, shrieking, before another set of arms pulled him bodily into the sea. Panic erupted. "Hold the doors," Doyle roared. "Don't let them through." The barricades shook as the dead battered them. Fists slammed against the metal, groaning voices pressing against the air like fog. Then silence. The crew froze. The door hinges screeched. Slowly the mess hall doors began to bend inward. Fingers, bloated, grey, unyielding, poked through the gap. The metal shrieked as the hinges snapped. The dead burst through. Chaos swallowed the mess hall. Survivors swung pipes, knives, fists. The air filled with the crack of gunfire and the sickening crunch of bone. Blood slicked the floor. Screams rose and fell. Eleanor fired the flare gun, the red blast searing a ghastly figure's chest. The corpse ignited, stumbling back in flames, its shrieks drowning beneath the storm's roar. For a moment, the others recoiled from the fire. "Fire hurts them," she shouted. "Burn them!" The survivors scrambled for anything flammable, rags, cooking oil, paper, but the dead surged again. One crewman went down beneath a swarm, his shrieks muffled as hands dragged him apart. The captain's revolver clicked empty. He swung it like a club, bellowing as he smashed skull after skull. But for every corpse that fell, 2 more crawled through the door. "They're endless," someone screamed. And then Eleanor understood. The Titanic had been filled with more than 2,000 souls when it sank. 2,000 who had died in freezing terror, their last breath stolen by the sea. And now the sea was giving them back. The survivors broke. The mess hall was lost. They fled into the corridors, chased by groans and the slap of wet feet. Eleanor sprinted down passageways, the ship tilting under the storm's fury. Lights flickered, casting corpses in stuttering flashes as they lurched closer and closer. She ducked into the laboratory, slamming the door and jamming a chair beneath the handle. Her breath tore ragged from her lungs. The glass chamber stood in the center of the room. The first body, the one they had retrieved, still lay strapped within. Its glowing eyes followed her. "You started this," she whispered, voice shaking. "You're their anchor." The corpse's lips peeled back, and a stream of seawater gushed from its mouth. But beneath the hiss of liquid, Eleanor swore she heard words. Not anchor, door. Her heart lurched. She turned, just as the laboratory door cracked inward. Hands reached through. She screamed and fired another flare. The door exploded in fire and splinters, corpses burning as they stumbled inside. She bolted through the flames, back into the storm-soaked corridors. On deck, the night was madness. The rain poured in sheets, thunder cracking like cannon fire, and from the black ocean, the dead kept climbing. Hundreds now swarmed the ship, their forms slick and relentless. Survivors fought where they stood. Some wielded torches, setting fire to whatever they could. Others were dragged screaming over the rails, pulled into the waves below where pale hands waited. Captain Doyle fought at the bow, his revolver long discarded, his fists bloodied. He caught sight of Eleanor and shouted over the storm, "They're endless, Hayes! What do we do?" Her mind raced. Fire slowed them, but not enough. Bullets couldn't stop them. The infection spread too fast. There was only one answer, as terrible as it was. "We have to take it back," she shouted. "Back to the wreck! The body! They're tied to it!" The captain's eyes widened. "You want to go back down there? We're barely holding them here." "It's the only way," Eleanor cried. "If we don't, this won't stop. Not here, not anywhere. The whole world will drown in them." The ship lurched violently, a massive wave crashing across the deck. Corpses tumbled with it, clawing even as the sea dragged them. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the endless horde rising from the water. A sea of the dead, climbing, reaching, groaning in unison. The Titanic was calling its children home, and they were answering. Word count 1,340, right in the target range for Act 3. It leaves us set for Act 4, Eleanor's desperate descent with the body back to Titanic, the explosive climax. Do you want me to dive into Act 4, the last descent? 1,200 to 50. The storm battered the Calypso dawn like a beast with claws of water and wind. Lightning split the sky, revealing the deck crawling with corpses. Survivors fought in pockets, torches flickering against the endless swarm. The air reeked of salt, blood, and burning flesh. Eleanor staggered across the deck, clutching the glass chamber that held the corpse. Its glowing eyes followed her through the rain, lips twitching as though mocking her. Captain Doyle met her at the crane. His coat was soaked, pistol gone, but fire still burned in his eyes. "You're serious about this?" He shouted above the storm. "It's the only way," Eleanor cried. "They're bound to it. If I return the body, maybe the link will break. And if it doesn't?" She glanced at the horde clawing across the railings, dragging men into the Black Sea. "Then none of us were going to survive anyway." For a moment the captain's jaw clenched. Then he nodded. "I'll hold them. You get it done." The submersible bobbed at the waterline, its hatch open, swaying dangerously in the storm. Eleanor shoved the chamber inside, her arms trembling with exhaustion. She climbed in after it, sealing the hatch as rotting hands slammed against the outer hull. The controls flickered alive. Her breath shook as she pressed the descent lever. The vessel groaned, then plunged beneath the waves. Darkness swallowed her. The chaos above faded, replaced by the muffled roar of the ocean. She checked the rear cameras. The horde followed, dozens of corpses drifting down like pale meteors, their glowing eyes burning through the gloom. The Titanic emerged from the abyss, colossal and broken, yet still regal in death. Its shattered bow loomed like the jaws of a beast. The sub's lights swept across the wreck, illuminating familiar halls now alive with movement. The dead stirred in every corridor, their heads turning toward the glow. Eleanor steered toward the captain's quarters, the chamber rattling beside her. "Back to where you came from," she whispered, voice trembling. Inside the wreck, silence reigned, but for the groaning of metal and the faint hiss of seawater pressing against steel. Eleanor donned her dive suit, her breath fogging the visor. She strapped the chamber to her harness, the corpse's face pressed inches from her own. Its glowing eyes burned like lanterns in the dark. The hatch opened. Cold water surged in, swallowing her in a freezing embrace. Her heart pounded as she drifted into the ruins of Titanic. The grand staircase stretched before her, its railings twisted but still recognizable. Corpses lined the steps like mourners, watching silently as she passed. Their eyes tracked her every move, but none attacked, as if they were waiting. She reached the captain's quarters. The door half collapsed. With trembling hands, she wedged the chamber inside, chaining it to the rusted bed frame. "There," she whispered, "back where you belong." The corpse twitched violently, its mouth opening in a soundless scream. Bubbles erupted around it. The walls vibrated with a deep groan that seemed to come from the ship itself. Then the swarm struck. Figures poured into the room, clawing through the broken walls, jaws snapping, eyes blazing. Eleanor fired her flare gun, the red blaze cutting through the dark. Flames ignited cloth and flesh, but more surged forward. She fumbled for the detonator strapped to her belt, the charges she had armed on the submersible's hull. The only way to end this was to bury the Titanic once more, to seal the curse beneath iron and ocean. Cold hands seized her arm. She screamed, wrenching free, slamming her knife into the corpse's skull. It writhed but did not fall. Another grabbed her from behind, dragging her backward. Her visor cracked against rusted steel. Water seeped in. Panic clawed her chest. Through the blur, she saw the chamber, the original corpse thrashing, its glow intensifying until the whole room shimmered yellow. The others froze, staring at it like worshippers at an altar. This was the heart, the anchor, the infection itself. Eleanor slammed the detonator. The explosion thundered through the wreck. Steel split like bone, walls collapsing inward. Water rushed in torrents, sweeping corpses into the abyss. The chamber shattered. The glowing corpse torn apart in a blast of light and bubbles. The Titanic groaned one final time, a death rattle that echoed through the deep. Then it crumbled, collapsing into itself, burying the horde beneath centuries of ruin. Eleanor was hurled backward, her visor filling with water. Her lungs burned as she fought for breath, the darkness crushing in. And then, silence. When she awoke, she was floating. The submersible's emergency beacon blinked faintly, half buried in wreckage. Her dive suit was torn, her body bruised, but she was alive. She looked around. The glowing eyes were gone. The water was empty. The curse had been sealed, or so she thought. Days later, a passing cargo vessel found her adrift in the escape pod, unconscious but alive. She was taken aboard, wrapped in blankets, given water. The captain of the freighter leaned down. "You're lucky to be breathing, miss. Found you alone in the Atlantic." Eleanor opened her mouth, but no words came. Her reflection in the cabin's porthole caught her eye. Her pupils gleamed faint yellow in the dim light. Her breath hitched. The curse had not ended. It had followed her.